Hey everyone, this is Axe and David with 360 Immersive. Now today we're going to talk about a question that many of you have asked us regarding virtual reality training. And that is, what are the differences between 360-degree live experiences and VR computer simulation training? So David, there's tremendous benefit to immersive experiences. And let's talk a little bit about those two types of training and maybe the pros and cons of each, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you think about it, most people and organizations are familiar with VR training or VR as a new technology. And there's really two types. It's computer simulation, VR simulation that is actually created literally in the computer and then people engage it. Or live experiences that are real video. It's just like traditional video, except when you're in it, you can look all around. So if we take a look, for instance, at 360 live experiences, there's some benefits to that. Number one is that it's real people. So when you're training and doing your simulation, you capture that simulation. And you may work on best practices, and maybe you're thinking about some testing strategies that can go into ultimately probably an app. But it's real people, real processes, real tactics if it's certain organizations, and real procedures, and it's their uniforms, it's their people. The other advantage is that these type of training circumstances are usually more affordable, because you're already setting up and you're already doing your simulation out in the field, and we just capture that, do the proper editing, and then put it into an app, and away you go. You're not really creating an environment like you can in a computer-based circumstance.
So if I can interrupt there, I mean, it sounds like that's great, that's fantastic. There's got to be a catch. What's the potential downside or the con on this one?
Well, some of the situations, for instance, is that there's less interactivity. So in a computer-based scenario, we can actually move around on our own. We can, if we've got, let's say, a hazmat circumstance, we can walk over and look at things. In live video experiences, we're kind of on a rail. We're dealing with how the person that originally shot the content, how he wants us to move. So that's less interactivity on the video side, more interactivity on the computer side.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, on the live video side, you're kind of along for the ride as you go on the experience.
Exactly that.
But it's real. Whereas on the computer-generated side, you might be able to direct things, but it's in a computer simulation, cartoonish environment, if you will. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, we call it gamification. You know, sometimes it can be very realistic. Now, the more realistic that you make it, certainly the more expensive you get into. But I wouldn't say that the 360 live experience side for virtual reality is necessarily a negative. It's that you're going to be trained in a very specific way, and it works very specifically, perhaps on how the training instructor wants you to see that simulation. On the other hand, having the ability to look around yourself and walk over here and maybe pick up this item creates a level of engagement that we can't yet do in VR when it comes to live experiences. So there's pros and cons, and really it's not a Ford or Chevy, it's what works best for your particular training circumstance.
Okay, so there's clearly benefits to the live experience. What are some of the advantages of this computer simulation VR that we're talking about?
Well, one of the fundamental reasons is that it's more interactive, and we can discuss interactivity as far as the ability to engage and look around and walk and literally walk around, pick up items. But more so, we can create circumstances that you would not create in real life. For instance, we can take a tanker truck, we can flip it on its side in a ditch, we can put a gash in that tanker truck, we can leak hazardous materials from that truck, and then we can do multiplayer or role-playing scenarios that allow us to do team building. Or as an individual, we may engage what we call bots from an AI standpoint that you're maybe the incident commander, and you have your folks that are working with you, but they're actually not real, they're computer generated. So those are some of the things that we can do from a computer circumstance. Embedded assessments is also one of the things that's very strong in the computer side, is that we can analyze where people are looking, we can analyze what they're going over and picking up or what they're highlighting, and all of that is actually lets us know how well they're doing within the course. So if you think about it, right now somebody takes a live course, they have a live presenter up there. How well do we understand what they retain? In this type of environment, we can actually gather data that tells us exactly if we're doing a good job with the course. And maybe we need to make some changes. Maybe there's a point of distraction over here, and we really want our students to look over here, but everybody looks over here and they completely miss this point. Well, at a point in time, we gather the data, we can ascertain that everybody's looking over here, so we need to change that content so they're engaged with where we want them to become engaged.
Gotcha. So it sounds like this computer simulated environment can be a lot more forgiving of mistakes. If you're doing your tanker truck that's leaking hazardous materials or bomb disposal or surgery, you can make mistakes in that environment in a non-risk situation and learn from it that way.
A very productive situation. Yeah. The other thing is that it's extremely costly to create a live simulation out in the field that's really meaningful. I mean, let's face it, in the tanker truck situation, most of the time they drive a tanker truck out and then they play act. They do role playing. In this case, we can create simulations that are extremely impactful because they can actually work through the scenario. They feel like they're standing next to, in the situation with the tanker truck, next to it. They'll see the material leaking out. They'll look around and they can see the wind blowing. And you just can't create circumstances like that are either, number one, too expensive to do live simulation, or number two is that maybe it's hazardous. We wouldn't set up a hazardous situation that might be detrimental to our personnel, but in computer simulation, we can create anything.
Thank you. That's a lot to think about. Thanks for joining us today, and we will look forward to our next time together.